All right, let's ditch those beach towels and grab some textbooks because we are going deep into the world of learning English as a second language today.
But not your typical classroom setting, though.
No, not at all.
We're going to a hotel institute in Indonesia.
We're headed to Indonesia to a hotel institute.
That's right. We'll be looking at a training module from the SIHI Subang International Hotel Institute.
Wow.
From back in 2020.
Okay.
It's called Model English Conversations. .pdf, and it's designed to help aspiring hotel staff master the art of English conversation.
Now, what I think is really cool about this is that it doesn't just focus on the, grammar rules.
Yeah.
It's got all these practical phrases and dialogues specifically for the kinds of things that hotel staff have to deal with every day.
Right. Think of it as a crash course in everything from greeting guests to handling those, shall we say, spirited complaints, all while navigating the unique linguistic landscape of a hotel environment.
Okay, so let's unpack the structure of this module a little bit. First off, how exactly does it approach teaching English conversation?
Well, the module's main purpose is crystal clear. It's to give these hotel students the English skills they need to thrive in real-world interactions. And they achieve this by placing a heavy emphasis on what's called dry practice.
Dry practice.
Yeah.
Is that like learning to swim without getting in the water?
It's a bit like, it basically means they focus on hands-on learning through role-playing and simulations.
Okay.
It's all about getting the students to actually use the language in realistic scenarios as opposed to just memorizing vocabulary lists.
Interesting.
In fact, a whopping 70% of the curriculum is dedicated to this type of active learning.
Wow, 70%, they clearly believe in learning by doing.
Yeah.
So what sorts of scenarios does this module cover?
Well, module dives right into 17 different conversational expressions covering a wide range of situations you typically encounter in a hotel.
Okay, so they're not wasting any time.
No.
I'm dying to know more about these expressions. What are some of the most intriguing ones?
Well, one that immediately caught my eye is their approach to time and calculation. Instead of saying 7.25, they teach the students to say 25 past 7.
Really?
Yeah, it's a small difference, but it highlights how language can adapt to specific contexts.
I find that so interesting. I wonder if it's like a regional way of expressing time or something specific to the hospitality industry.
That's a great question, and it really speaks to the heart of what we're exploring here.
Yeah.
This module provides a fascinating glimpse into how language is used in a very particular setting. Another great example of this is their section on how to describe objects.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that. I noticed they get quite specific.
They do. They actually provide a very precise adjective order for describing things.
Okay.
Opinion, size, shape, age, color, origin, material, and finally, purpose or qualifier.
Wow.
So instead of just saying a nice big round table, you'd say a beautiful, large, round, antique brown Indonesian wooden dining table.
Wow. That's quite a mouthful.
Yeah.
But I can see how that level of detail could be important in a hotel setting.
It's exactly. Imagine a guest has lost a piece of luggage, and the staff need to communicate clearly about its appearance to find it.
Right.
This specific adjective order helps ensure everyone is on the same page,
Okay.
preventing confusion and wasted time.
That makes perfect sense. It's like a linguistic system designed for efficiency and clarity in a fast-paced environment.
Precisely. And this focus on practical application extends to other sections as well, like telephoning.
Ah, yes. The dreaded phone call.
Right.
Does the module cover those cringe-worthy moments when you accidentally answer the phone in your best just woke up voice?
Well, maybe not that specifically.
Okay.
But they do offer both formal and informal scripts for handling phone calls, which I think is brilliant.
That's so smart. It's like acknowledging that there's a whole spectrum of communication styles, even within a professional environment.
Exactly. For instance, if it's a potential guest inquiring about room availability,
Yeah.
a formal tone is definitely called for. You use polite phrases like, "Good morning, thank you for calling hotel name. How may I assist you?"
It's all about creating that polished first impression.
Yeah.
Making guests feel valued and confident in the hotel's service from the moment they pick up the phone.
Right.
But I imagine things get a little more relaxed when it's staff talking amongst themselves, right?
Absolutely. For example, let's say you're calling a colleague about a maintenance issue. In that scenario, a more casual approach is perfectly acceptable.
Okay.
You might say something like, "Hey, it's your name. We've got a bit of a situation in room 205.
So it's not just about knowing English, it's about knowing how to use it appropriately in different situations.
Exactly.
It's like having a linguistic toolbox with different tools for different jobs.
That's a great analogy. You wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a screw.
Yeah.
And similarly, you adjust your language based on the context and who you're talking to.
Yeah.
And this module seems to have a tool for just about every occasion. But let's not forget about one of the most common and sometimes dreaded aspects of hotel life, dealing with complaints.
Ah, yes, the complaints. Because, let's face it, no matter how perfect a hotel strives to be, there will always be something that doesn't quite meet a guest's expectations. How does this module approach such a delicate topic?
It tackles it head on, providing incredibly realistic dialogues for handling complaints.
Really?
It goes beyond simply teaching polite phrases and actually delves into strategies for de-escalating tense situations and resolving issues effectively.
So they're not just teaching English, they're teaching conflict resolution skills as well.
Exactly. They equip students with phrases for expressing empathy and understanding, offer solutions and apologies, and ultimately aim to leave the guest feeling heard and respected, even if their issue can't be immediately resolved.
That's so important. It's like they're recognizing that language can be a powerful tool for building relationships and diffusing potentially difficult situations.
Precisely, and it all comes back to that core principle of practical application.
Yeah.
This module doesn't just teach students what to say, it teaches them how to say it in a way that achieves a specific goal.
So we've got this module packed with practical phrases and dialogues, all tailored to the unique demands of the hospitality industry. But I'm curious to know more about how some of these expressions work in practice. What do you say we take a deeper dive into a specific section?
I'm all for that we could explore the intricacies of describing objects, delve into the nuances of formal versus informal telephone conversations, or even analyze those complaint dialogues in more detail.
So many options. Which one speaks to you the most? I'm really intrigued by that whole idea of having different communication styles for different situations, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Let's go into that telephoning section you mentioned earlier.
Oh.
I'm curious to see how they navigate the line between formal and informal language.
Yeah, it really highlights how this module prepares students for that dynamic nature of communication.
Yeah.
In a hotel environment, it's not just about knowing English, it's about knowing when to kind of switch gears and adjust your approach based on, who's on the other end of the line.
Exactly. It's like they're learning to read the room.
Yeah.
Even when there's no room to read, just a voice on the phone.
Right now, imagine you're a receptionist at this hotel
Okay.
and the phone rings.
Okay.
If it's a potential guest calling to inquire about room availability, you'd instinctively adopt a more formal tone.
Right.
The module gives examples like, "Good morning, thank you for calling a hotel name. How may I assist you?"
It sounds very professional and polished.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. You want to project an image of, competence and reliability right from the start. But wouldn't that same level of formality feel a bit stiff if you were calling, say, the maintenance staff about a leaky faucet?
You've hit the nail on the head. The module acknowledges this by providing a separate set of phrases for more informal calls between colleagues.
Interesting.
It's all about striking the right balance. You wouldn't want to use slang with a guest, but a bit of casual language with a coworker
Right.
can help build rapport and streamline communication.
So it's not just about sounding proper, it's about being appropriate for the situation.
Right.
It's like they're learning a whole new set of social cues,
Right.
but for the phone.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
They've essentially created a mini course in telephone etiquette woven into their English language training.
That's so cool.
And they even sprinkle in some common slang terms to help students navigate those more casual conversations.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that earlier. What kind of slang do they include? I have to admit, I'm a little curious.
Well, they use examples like grab a bite instead of have a meal,
Okay.
or chilling as a shortened version of chilling out.
Okay.
It might seem like small stuff, but it helps students understand that language is constantly evolving and adapting to different social contexts.
That's so true. And I bet it's a relief for the students to know that they don't have to sound like robots all the time.
Yeah.
But I can also see how teaching slang could be tricky.
Yeah.
There are so many regional variations and it can change so quickly.
You're absolutely right. That's why it's crucial for language instructors to stay up to date on the latest trends and tailor their teaching to the specific needs of their students.
Right.
In this case, I imagine they're focusing on slang terms that are common in Indonesia and relevant to the hospitality industry.
That makes sense. It's like they're giving these students a secret decoder ring for navigating the complex world of English as it's actually spoken, not just how it appears in textbooks.
I love that analogy. And it's not just about understanding the words themselves. It's about grasping the subtle nuances of tone, formality, and cultural context.
It's making me think about how often we take those nuances for granted in our own native languages.
Right.
We switch between different communication styles so effortlessly that we don't even realize we're doing it.
It's like a dance, isn't it? We instinctively adapt our steps to the music and our partner.
Yeah,
And when you're learning a new language, you're essentially learning a new dance routine.
that's a beautiful way to put it. And this module is like a crash course in the most essential steps for anyone hoping to dance their way through the world of English conversation in a hotel environment.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual steps.
Right.
It's about understanding the overall choreography.
Okay, so we've seen how this module equips students with the skills to handle both formal and informal phone calls, which is a pretty impressive feat.
Yes.
But I can't help but wonder, what about those situations that go beyond a simple phone call?
Yeah.
You know, those face-to-face encounters where things can get a little, shall we say, heated? You're talking about the complaints section, right?
Exactly. Those moments of truth.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how this module doesn't shy away from these challenging scenarios.
Right.
It dives right into the heart of conflict resolution, equipping students with the linguistic tools to navigate those choppy waters.
I'm so impressed by how they've managed to turn potentially negative situations into valuable learning opportunities.
Right.
It's like they're saying, hey, complaints are going to happen. Yeah.
So let's make sure you're prepared to handle them with grace and professionalism.
And remember, this isn't just about smoothing things over. It's about empowering the students to communicate effectively, even under pressure.
Yeah.
They're learning to express empathy, offer solutions, and ultimately aim for a resolution that leaves both parties feeling respected.
It's like they're being trained as linguistic diplomats, ready to negotiate peace in the realm of customer service. It makes you realize how much power language holds in those situations.
Yeah.
A well-chosen phrase can de-escalate a tense exchange and turn a potential PR disaster into a positive interaction.
Absolutely. This module highlights how language can be a bridge connecting people even when their expectations haven't been met.
Yeah.
It's about building relationships even in the midst of a complaint.
So we've explored how this module tackles everything from time-telling to telephoning, all with a focus on equipping students with the practical English skills they need to thrive in a hotel environment. But what does this all mean for our listeners? Well, I think it offers a valuable lesson for anyone learning a language, whether it's for professional or personal reasons. It's not just about memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary lists. It's about understanding how language functions in the real world, how it adapts to different social contexts, and how it can be used to achieve specific goals.
It's about being aware of those subtle nuances we talked about earlier, knowing when to shift gears between formal and informal language, and even mastering the art of turning a complaint into a constructive conversation.
Exactly. And this module provides a wonderful example of how those principles can be applied in a very specific setting.
It's like they've given us a glimpse into a secret world of language.
Yeah.
Where phrases have a power beyond their literal meaning, and it makes you wonder what other hidden corners of language are out there waiting to be explored.
That's a great question to leave our listeners with.
Yeah.
We've seen how English is used in a hotel environment in Indonesia.
Right.
But what about other professions? What about your own line of work? What unique vocabulary and expressions do you use to navigate your professional world?
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? Language is constantly evolving, adapting to new environments and challenges, and who knows, maybe you, dear listener, are shaping the future of language in your own unique way.
Perhaps this deep dive has sparked a curiosity in you to explore those linguistic frontiers.
Yeah.
Who knows what fascinating discoveries await?
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those possibilities. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of English conversation Indonesian hotel style.
All right, get ready, because we're going deep into some really cool English expressions.
Yeah.
We're talking about the kind of stuff from our source, advanced everyday English,
Yeah.
that, can really take your communication skills to the next level.
I think what's really neat about this particular collection is that it's not just about, trying to sound impressive or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more about understanding the subtle nuances of the language and how, these expressions can really add depth and richness and even a touch of humor to your conversations.
Humor. Okay, now we're talking. So is this guide like a secret decoder ring for the English language?
You could say that, yeah. Take the phrase off the record, for example. Most people, they think it just means confidentiality, but
Right.
there's so much more to it than that. I mean, if you really think about it, it can create, some pretty interesting dynamics.
Interesting.
Especially when you're talking about power and trust.
Okay, so how does off the record become about power dynamics?
Well, just think about this. The source gives an example of a mortgage consultant who advises a client to go to their own bank for better interest rates.
Okay.
But only off the record. Now, why would they do that? Are they genuinely trying to help the client? Or is there something else going on there?
Right.
Maybe a way to undermine their own company.
I mean, that's a good point. Suddenly it just gets a lot more complicated.
It does, yeah.
Who benefits the most from this kind of off-the-record advice?
Right.
Is it genuine goodwill or is it a power play?
Yeah. And that's what I think makes these advanced expressions so interesting.
Okay.
They operate on multiple levels.
Right.
And they can reveal a lot about the speaker's intentions.
This is like linguistic chess.
It is.
All right, this deep dive is blowing my mind already. But let's move on to a word that I think we often use without fully appreciating it.
Okay.
And that word is outgoing. We all know it describes someone who's, sociable,
Sure.
extroverted.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's more to it than that.
There is a lot more to it. Outgoing can also refer to expenses, right? Like if you're, calculating the outgoing costs on a property.
Right.
Or it can also describe like a departing official,
Interesting.
like an outgoing president. Picture a job ad, like they're looking for an outgoing sales assistant.
Yeah.
And then in another situation, picture a town saying farewell to their outgoing president.
Yeah. Wow. Very different situations. It's all about context, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
The same word can completely change its meaning depending on the situation.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure we're using these words correctly?
Well, that's where, continuous learning comes in. Brushing up, as the source calls it.
Right.
It's important, whether it's, language skills or a specific subject, or just staying up to date on current events. Brushing up is what keeps our knowledge fresh and relevant.
So it's not about just cramming in all this information and then, calling it a day.
No.
It's about updating, refining what we know.
Yeah.
I like that.
It is, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like a much more sustainable approach.
It really is. Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of approaches, let's get into the world of touchy subjects
Okay.
and people. We all know someone who's a bit sensitive, right?
Yeah.
Takes criticism personally, gets offended easily.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm guessing there's more to this word than just, someone who's easily upset.
There is. The example that the source gives contrasts touchy with thick-skinned.
Okay.
And it suggests a whole spectrum of emotional resilience. We all have different thresholds for what we find, offensive or hurtful.
Right.
And navigating those differences can be tricky.
It's like we're all walking on eggshells sometimes.
Yeah, it is a bit like that.
So is being touchy always a bad thing?
Well, that's a good question. And I think it's one that we can explore further as we, dig into all these expressions.
I like it. Okay, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about something that can be both, comforting and incredibly frustrating.
All right.
Cliches.
Cliches, yes.
Those phrases we've all heard a million times.
A million times, yeah.
They've kind of lost all their meaning. Like I can practically hear a football manager saying, "We gave 110% out there."
Yeah, exactly. Why do they persist? Why do we keep using them?
That's a good question.
I think part of it is that they provide a sense of familiarity
Yeah.
and comfort. It's like a well-worn path in our brains,
Yeah.
easy to follow,
Right.
and not very exciting.
So how do we avoid sounding like a broken record? Do we need to ban cliches from our vocabulary?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's one we'll definitely be getting into as we continue this deep dive.
Okay, good.
But first, I want to lay out another really versatile phrase.
Ooh, lay it on me. I like this. Lay out.
Yeah. To lay out, it can mean, presenting information clearly.
Right.
Like laying out proposals in a booklet.
Makes sense.
It can also describe designing a space, like laying out a garden.
Okay.
And of course, it can also mean, reluctantly spending money.
Oh, I've been there.
Like when you have to lay out a small fortune for unexpected car repairs.
Oh, tell me about it. So laying out can be about like strategic planning, but also, the begrudging act of spending money you weren't planning on spending.
Yeah, exactly. It covers quite a lot.
Very adaptable phrase.
It is.
Sometimes I feel like a bit of a dog's body, especially in, the grand scheme of things.
Oh, the dog's body, yeah.
Running around doing those little tasks that nobody else wants to do.
Well, our source actually has this fascinating story about Ted Davies.
Okay.
Now, he started his career as a football club. Dog's body, cleaning boots, doing odd jobs.
Interesting.
Now,
Okay.
Ted, he didn't let his, humble beginnings define him.
Good for him.
He used those experiences to learn and grow,
Right.
eventually becoming a successful football manager.
Wow.
It's a good reminder. We shouldn't underestimate the value of those, even those seemingly insignificant tasks.
That's inspiring, actually. Like they were almost laying the foundation for his, later success. Maybe we shouldn't dismiss the dog's body tasks so quickly.
No, I don't think we should.
Hidden opportunities there.
All right, well, let's talk about something that is so crucial in the world of business.
Okay.
Breaking even.
Breaking even.
Yeah.
The holy grail. Right.
It is for a lot of businesses, yeah.
It's that moment when your income matches your expenses.
Exactly. The source gives an example of a business hoping to break even in its first year,
Okay.
which, can be a tall order. It signifies stability.
Right.
And then, once you've achieved that balance, then you can start thinking about growth and expansion.
Yeah. It's like you've built a solid foundation.
Yeah.
Now you can add a few floors. But what happens when we're so busy, building that we end up with a huge backlog?
Oh, the dreaded backlog. Yes,
It can really feel overwhelming,
it can.
whether it's paperwork or, patients waiting to see the doctor or even just our own to-do list. It never seems to end.
That's true.
So backlogs can be everywhere, not just at work.
They really can.
But are they always a bad thing?
Well, it depends. They can be a sign that you're in high demand,
Right.
but they could also be a sign that something needs to change.
Okay.
Maybe you need to streamline your processes,
Makes sense.
delegate tasks,
Right.
or even just say no more often.
It's like a wake-up call.
It can be, yeah.
We need to reevaluate how we're managing our time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another communication skill that I think is often overlooked,
All right.
and that is going beyond just getting the gist of something.
Oh, yeah, getting the gist. I think it's like, reading those spark notes for a book.
Yeah.
You understand the basic plot, but you miss all those nuances.
Right, the character development.
Exactly.
The beautiful language. It's like you're skimming the surface.
Yeah, you are.
You might see a couple of pretty fish,
Right.
but you're missing the whole ecosystem down there. So how do we move beyond getting the gist
Yeah.
and really engage with, the information?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One that I think we should explore a little further as we continue our deep dive into advanced everyday English.
Let's do it.
But first, I think we should shift our attention to something a little more exciting. The world of the up and coming.
Ooh, yes. The up-and-comers. I like that.
Those individuals or those trends that are poised for, greatness. This source gives a great example. Young politicians who are already skilled at, navigating legislation, foreign languages.
Wow. It's like they're already fluent in the language of power.
They are. They're the rising stars.
How do we identify these future leaders?
Well, I think it's a combination of factors.
Okay.
They often possess, a unique blend of talent, vision, and this willingness to challenge the status quo.
It's like they're already writing the next chapter of history
Yeah, they are.
while the current chapter is still being written. But is it always about being bold and disruptive?
That's a great question. And it's one that we will delve into further as we continue our exploration of advanced everyday English.
All right. Sounds good.
So we were talking about these young, up-and-coming politicians.
Right. Those rising stars.
But, up-and-coming isn't just limited to people. It can apply to, trends and ideas as well, things that are, gaining momentum.
Right. On the verge of becoming the next big thing.
Yeah.
So how do we spot these trends? Is there like a secret formula or something?
I wish there was, but I think it's a matter of, paying attention, keeping your finger on the pulse, so to speak. Reading, observing, talking to people, really immersing yourself in the world around you.
So it's about being curious, staying informed.
Exactly. And also, not being afraid to think outside the box, challenge those conventional assumptions.
Okay. So be curious, challenge assumptions.
Yeah.
Got it. Now let's talk about something that can be a little bit tricky.
Right.
The whole idea of, framing our thoughts,
Affirming, yeah.
how we use language to shape the way that people perceive our message.
Because it really does matter, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Even those seemingly simple choices like, active versus passive voice or, choosing specific adjectives, it can have a huge impact.
It can. The example that the source gives is the phrase up in the air.
Okay, up in the air.
On the surface, it just means, uncertain.
Right, like plans for the weekend that haven't been finalized.
Exactly. But the way we use it can convey a whole range of emotions.
Right.
Imagine like a business owner telling their employees that their jobs are up in the air.
Oh, yeah.
Because of financial difficulties.
Oh, that takes on a whole new meaning.
It does. It's suddenly loaded with anxiety, uncertainty.
So it's not just the words themselves.
No.
It's how we use them.
Yeah, it's about creating a mood.
Okay. So much to think about. All right, another expression that we all encounter from time to time, and it's not always pleasant.
Right.
To rub someone up the wrong way.
Oh, yeah, we all know that person.
Ugh, yes. That person who just, I don't know, they just get under your skin.
They do.
And they might not even mean to.
Right.
But something about them, just rubs us the wrong way.
So why is that? Why do some people have that effect?
It's a good question.
Is it a personality clash? A difference in values?
Who knows?
The phrase itself, though, rubbing someone up the wrong way, really does suggest a kind of fundamental incompatibility.
Right, yeah.
Two gears grinding against each other.
Oof, yeah. Creating that friction.
Yeah, and friction can, generate heat.
Ooh, I see where you're going with this.
And rubbing someone up the wrong way, well, that can lead to conflict.
Yeah.
Resentment.
Right.
Even like a breakdown in communication.
Okay. I'm going to try to be more mindful about how I'm rubbing people.
Yeah.
And speaking of breakdowns, let's talk about that moment when we finally reach our breaking point. The final straw or the last straw.
Yes, it's that one event or action that just pushes us over the edge.
Right. Like, I don't know, you've been putting up with a lot of nonsense.
You have, yeah.
And then suddenly there's this one thing and that's it, I'm done.
Exactly. You've had enough. It's like that old saying, the straw that broke the camel's back.
It really is. So how do we know when we've reached that point?
That's a really good question, an important one too. And I think it's something we should talk about more as we continue our deep dive into advanced everyday English.
Okay, sounds good.
But first, I want to focus on another really crucial communication skill.
Okay.
The ability to weigh up different sides of a situation before making a judgment.
Weigh up. Okay, what does that mean to weigh up something?
Well, it means taking a step back.
Okay.
Gathering information.
Right.
Analyzing the pros and cons.
Looking at it from different angles.
Exactly. And, considering different perspectives before you actually reach a conclusion.
It's like being a judge. You have to examine all the evidence.
You do.
Before making a ruling.
And that process of weighing up, it's so important.
I can see that.
Especially in those really complex situations.
Yeah, where there's no easy answer.
Yeah, it's about being thoughtful and deliberate.
Okay, but sometimes even after we've, weighed up all the options, we still need more information.
Right.
So how do we draw out that information from someone who might not be so willing to share?
Drawing out information. That is a skill.
It is, yeah.
You need finesse, you need strategy.
It's like being a detective.
It is a bit like that. You have to ask the right questions.
Right.
Create a sense of trust.
Okay.
Be patient.
Let the information kind of come out naturally.
Exactly. And that's such a valuable skill.
It is, yeah.
In all aspects of life, from personal relationships to professional negotiations.
It's about connection.
It is.
All right. Well, sometimes I have to admit I feel completely baffled.
Baffled, yeah.
By certain situations, certain concepts. It's like my brain just hits a wall.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Those baffled moments.
What is going on?
Exactly. Like you're just lost in a maze.
Right. With no way out. But is being baffled always a bad thing?
That's a great question. And it's one that we can explore further as we delve deeper into advanced everyday English.
Okay, let's do it.
But first, I think we should shift our focus a little bit and talk about the importance of sometimes keeping a low profile.
Keeping a low profile. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. It's about, blending in.
Right.
Flying under the radar. Avoiding unnecessary attention.
So why would someone choose to do that?
Is it weakness? Or is it strategy?
Ooh, good question. So when is it a good idea to keep a low profile?
And when should we, stand up and be noticed?
Those are good questions.
They are. And they're questions we'll definitely address as we continue to explore advanced everyday English.
Okay, good.
But for now, I want to dive into a phrase that I think we all relate to, especially in today's, crazy busy world.
Uh-oh, I know where this is going.
The dreaded backlog.
Oh, the backlog, that ever-growing mountain of stuff.
Yes.
Emails, tasks, just responsibilities.
It never ends, does it?
It really doesn't.
So the question is, are backlogs always a bad thing?
That's a good point. Maybe they're a sign that we're, in high demand.
Could be.
We're just so popular we can't keep up.
Right, that's one way to look at it. But they could also be a sign that something needs to change.
Right.
Maybe you need to, streamline those processes, delegate some tasks,
Okay.
or even just say no more often.
It's about setting boundaries.
It is, yeah.
So sometimes a backlog is a wake-up call.
It can be.
We need to reevaluate how we're spending our time.
Absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of reevaluating, let's talk about a concept that's particularly relevant in the business world.
All right.
Breaking even.
Breaking even. Yeah, the dream, right.
For any entrepreneur.
It is. It's that point when your income finally matches your expenses.
Exactly.
No profit, but no loss either.
You're in the black.
You are. The source gives the example of a business hoping to break even in its first year, which, can be a huge accomplishment for a new business. It's a sign of stability.
It is, yeah.
And it kind of lays the groundwork for future success.
So it's like you've weathered the storm.
Yeah.
You've reached safe harbor. But what happens when we face, setbacks?
Right.
Challenges. How do we push through and come through those tough times?
That is a really great question. And it's one that I think we should spend some time discussing as we delve deeper into advanced everyday English.
I like it.
But for now, I want to shift our focus to something a little more extraordinary, the realm of the unheard of.
Ooh, okay, the unheard of. I like that.
Yes, it refers to something so rare.
Right.
Or so unusual that it defies our expectations.
Like stumbling upon, I don't know, like a hidden oasis
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the middle of the desert.
It's a moment of surprise,
Yeah.
and wonder. It challenges our assumptions.
Okay. So how do we respond to the unheard of? Do we embrace it? Or do we, kind of cling to those familiar ways of thinking?
I think that's a really interesting question. And honestly, it's one that we could probably spend hours debating.
I bet.
But for now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about a phrase that often walks this, fine line between humor and hurt feelings. To give someone stick.
To give someone stick.
Okay. It basically means to tease.
Right.
Or make fun of someone.
Right.
But it can so easily backfire if you're not careful.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, those friends who they love to poke fun at you.
Yeah.
But sometimes their jokes hit a little too close to home.
They do, yeah.
So how do we master the art of, giving stick without causing offense?
That is the million-dollar question. It all comes down to understanding your audience.
Right.
Their sense of humor, the context.
Right.
Sometimes, a little bit of teasing can strengthen a bond.
Sure.
But sometimes it can create, tension and resentment.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance.
It is.
Okay. Speaking of delicate, let's
Yeah.
talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of being stuck in a state of limbo. Okay.
Up in the air.
Up in the air.
Yes.
That frustrating feeling of not knowing what's going to happen.
Right. The source mentions it in the context of, a business decision
Right.
that hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay.
And it leaves everybody, feeling a bit uncertain, a bit anxious.
Yeah.
It's like waiting for those exam results.
Ugh.
You're on edge. You're anticipating the outcome, but you have no control over it.
You're just stuck
You are.
in this holding pattern.
Yeah.
So is there anything we can do about that?
Well, that's another really good question, and it's one that we can unpack further as we explore advanced everyday English.
Okay. Sounds good.
But for now, I want to shift our attention to another situation that can be equally unsettling,
Okay.
being out of one's depth.
Ooh, I've been there.
It's like being thrown in the deep end
Right.
when you don't know how to swim.
Exactly.
You're surrounded by all these experts,
Yeah.
and they're speaking a language that you barely understand.
Oh, I know that feeling. But is it always a negative experience?
Well, that's a question worth exploring.
Yeah, it is.
But for now, I want to talk about the more practical side of things.
Yeah.
How do we navigate those moments when we feel out of our depth?
Right.
Do we try to, fake it till we make it?
Yeah.
Or do we admit our limitations?
And seek help.
Exactly. Ask for guidance. But, we shouldn't forget about those who are often tasked with those, less glamorous jobs.
Right.
The dog's bodies of the world.
Yeah, the dog's body.
Our source reminds us that even those seemingly, menial roles
Right.
can be such valuable learning experiences.
Okay.
Remember the story of, Ted Davies, the football club dog's body,
Yeah.
who went on to become a successful manager.
Right. He climbed the ladder.
He did. And, those early experiences, even though they weren't glamorous,
Right.
they gave him such a strong foundation.
Okay.
And a really deep understanding of, how the organization worked.
It's like those tasks were like secret training missions.
They were preparing him for bigger things.
Yeah. Maybe those less glamorous jobs are just hidden opportunities.
They could be.
All right. Speaking of opportunities, let's talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of finally grasping a complex concept, to get one's head around something.
Yes, that aha moment.
Yes. When the fog clears,
Yeah,
it all makes sense.
it clicks.
It does. So how do we get to that point? Is it intelligence? Persistence?
Yeah.
Just dumb luck?
Another great question, and I think it's one that deserves a lot more discussion.
Okay.
But for now, I want to shift gears a little bit.
All right.
And talk about a phrase that really does require a leap of faith
Okay.
to give someone the benefit of the doubt.
Ooh. The benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Choosing to trust someone, even when you have those nagging doubts.
You do.
So when is it wise to do that?
When should we trust our gut?
Right. Proceed with caution.
Yeah. Our source highlights the importance of, extending trust, but also warns us against being, too naive,
Right.
too easily manipulated. It's like walking a tightrope.
It is.
You need balance, but you also need to be aware of the potential pitfalls.
Okay. Finding that sweet spot. That's tough. Speaking of tricky, let's talk about a phrase that's all about, playful teasing,
All right.
lighthearted banter,
Okay.
to take the mickey out of someone.
Oh, take the mickey.
Yeah, that's a very British expression.
It is.
It's about poking fun,
Yeah.
but not being mean.
No, not malicious.
Right. So how do we walk that line?
Well, like any kind of humor.
Right.
It's about being mindful of the other person's sensitivities.
Right.
And, not crossing that line into bullying or cruelty.
So it's like friendly sparring.
It is.
You're aiming for those playful jabs,
Yeah.
not a knockout punch. All right. Speaking of time, let's talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of being completely absorbed,
Okay.
to lose track of time.
Oh, lose track of time.
We've all been there.
We have.
You're engrossed in a good book,
Right.
or you're having this amazing conversation,
Yeah.
and then boom, suddenly hours have gone by.
They just disappear.
It's like stepping into a time warp.
It is.
You emerge feeling refreshed, but also kind of disoriented.
Right. Like, where did the time go?
Exactly. But is losing track of time always a good thing? Or is it sometimes a sign that, we're avoiding something important?
That is a really good question. And to be honest, I think it's one that requires a lot more thought and consideration.
Yeah.
But for now, I want to shift our attention to another aspect of communication.
Okay.
The unintended consequences of our actions.
Ooh, the unintended consequences.
Because sometimes, we say or do things
Right.
without fully realizing the impact they might have.
Right. Like those ripple effects.
Exactly. And, the word unwittingly captures that perfectly.
Okay. Unwittingly.
Doing something without realizing the full consequences.
Oh.
The source gives an example of, someone unwittingly leaving another person stranded
Oh, no.
in a really chaotic situation.
Well, that's a tough one.
It is, yeah. A classic case of, good intentions gone wrong.
It really is. So how do we avoid those kinds of, unwitting blunders?
Well, I think that's a question we need to delve into a bit deeper.
Okay.
As we explore the world of advanced everyday English.
Sounds good.
But first, I want to focus on a phrase that really does capture that feeling of finally letting go.
Okay.
Of something that's been weighing on our minds.
Right.
To get something out of one's system.
Get it out of your system. I love that feeling.
Oh, it is such a relief.
It's like purging those, toxic thoughts or emotions
Exactly.
that have been building up.
Just clogging up your mental space.
Yeah. But is it always a good idea to, get things out of our system?
Well, it depends. Our source talks about, the benefits of expressing yourself authentically, but also, it acknowledges that sometimes, it can lead to hurt feelings.
Right.
Or unintended consequences. It's like handling, a really delicate piece of china.
You have to be careful.
You do. You don't want to drop it.
Okay, so it's all about finding that balance.
It is.
All right. Speaking of delicate situations, let's talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of, unease, instability,
Okay.
unrest.
Unrest. Yeah.
We often use that to describe, social or political turmoil.
Right. When tensions are high,
Yeah.
people are on edge. The source actually mentions unrest in the context of, a protest.
Okay.
That escalated into violence.
Wow.
It's a reminder that, when frustrations reach a boiling point, things can spiral out of control
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
It's like watching a pot of water
Yeah.
slowly heat up.
Yeah.
And then suddenly boil over. So what can we do to, address those root causes of unrest? Prevent those situations from escalating? Is it dialogue?
It's a really good question. It's a big question.
It is.
And to be honest, it's one that we could probably spend hours unpacking.
Yeah, for sure.
But for now, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about a phrase that's all about financial abundance. To rake it in.
Oh, rake it in. Okay.
Yeah. Evoke those images of,
Money, money, money.
scooping up piles of cash.
Yeah. A true sign of success.
It is. But is raking it in just about money?
Good question. Or is there more to it?
I think there might be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something that we should definitely explore further as we continue our deep dive into advanced everyday English.
Okay, let's do it.
But first, I want to talk about another aspect of language learning.
Okay.
And that is the importance of going beyond just, skimming the surface.
Skimming the surface,
Yeah.
right? Like reading the Wikipedia entry instead of the whole book.
Exactly. The source really does emphasize the importance of engaging with information on a deeper level. Delving into those details,
Right.
uncovering the hidden layers of meaning. It's like the difference between looking at a painting from afar
Yeah.
and studying it up close.
You get so much more out of it.
You do. It's about depth of understanding.
That's where the real insights lie.
Oh, why?
Okay, speaking of insights, let's talk about a word that captures that feeling of utter astonishment.
All right.
Gobsmacked.
Gobsmacked.
It's like being struck by lightning.
It is.
You're just speechless.
Yeah. You're in shock.
The source uses gobsmacked to describe someone's reaction to, an unexpected turn of events.
Right.
Pure surprise and disbelief.
Exactly. Like, winning the lottery.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're happy,
You are.
but you're also in shock.
You are. It's a lot to process. But, let's not forget about those things that were once all the rage,
Right.
but have now kind of faded into obscurity.
Okay.
The source uses the term passé
Passe. Yeah.
to describe something that's just, outdated.
No longer fashionable. Exactly.
It's like, that old song
Yeah.
that you used to love.
Right.
But now it just makes you cringe a little.
Makes you cringe. Passe evokes that sense of nostalgia.
It does.
But also, the recognition that times change.
Right.
Tastes change.
What was once cool is now, yeah.
Now it's just embarrassing.
Yeah. Like looking at old photos of yourself.
Exactly.
Oh.
What was I thinking?
Okay, speaking of cringeworthy, let's talk about a word that really captures that feeling of, visceral disgust.
Oh, okay.
Squeamish.
Squeamish. Yeah.
It's like, you see something gross.
right.
You just want to look away.
You want to run away.
The source uses squeamish to describe, someone's reaction to the sight of blood
Yeah.
or gore. It's like that, ugh,
It's that physical reaction.
Yeah, it's like your stomach is doing flips
It is.
and you just want to escape. So is squeamishness just a physical reaction? Well, that's a really interesting question. And I think it's one that we could discuss at length.
For sure.
But for now, I want to shift our focus to something a little bit different.
Okay.
The importance of not dwelling on negative experiences.
Ooh. Not dwelling on the negative.
Yeah. Because we all do it, don't we?
We do.
We get stuck in those loops,
right.
replaying past mistakes,
Yeah.
worrying about, what might happen.
The what ifs.
The what ifs. And our source really emphasizes the importance of focusing on the present,
Right.
letting go of the past.
Easier said than done sometimes.
It is. But dwelling on negativity, it just drains our energy.
It does.
And it prevents us from embracing those new opportunities.
It's like carrying around a backpack full of rocks.
It is. It weighs you down.
Okay. So we need to lighten our mental load.
We do.
Focus on what we can control.
Absolutely. But sometimes, even when we're trying to be, positive, we need a little extra boost.
Yeah, we do.
Our source suggests that we might need to psych ourselves up.
Oh, psych ourselves up. Okay.
Yeah.
Like a pep talk.
Exactly. For a challenging task or, a difficult situation,
Right.
it could involve visualization,
Right.
positive affirmations,
Okay.
or even just, taking a few deep breaths.
Right. And reminding ourselves that we can do it.
Exactly. It's about finding that inner strength.
Okay. So we've psyched ourselves up,
We have,
but then we encounter, resistance or opposition.
right?
So when do we stand our ground
Yeah.
and when do we back down?
That is a tough one. And our source talks about the strategic importance of, knowing when to fight
Okay.
and knowing when to retreat.
Makes sense.
Because sometimes backing down, it's not a sign of weakness.
Right.
It's a strategic move
Yeah.
to preserve your energy for, more important battles.
It's like choosing your battles wisely.
It is. It's a valuable skill.
Okay. Well, speaking of things that can, drive us a little crazy, let's talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of utter exasperation.
Right?
To do one's head in.
Oh, to do one's head in.
That moment when you're ready to scream into a pillow.
You are.
What is going on?
The source uses it to describe, that feeling of just being utterly overwhelmed,
Yeah,
driven to distraction.
like your brain is on overload.
It is. It needs a break.
Yeah. It's like trying to, assemble that piece of furniture
Right.
where the instructions make absolutely no sense.
Exactly. And you just want to give up.
You just want to chuck the whole thing out the window.
Yeah.
So how do we manage those moments when, our heads are about to explode?
Well, that's a great question.
It is.
And it's one that we'll definitely unpack further as we continue to explore advanced everyday English.
Okay.
But for now, I want to focus on a word that captures that feeling of, something being ongoing
Okay.
and seemingly inescapable.
Right.
Perpetual.
Perpetual.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, that dripping faucet
Yeah.
that you can never, quote, seem to fix.
Exactly. A constant source of annoyance.
Yeah. It's like a little reminder that, some problems just don't go away.
They don't. But is perpetual always negative?
Ooh, good question. Could it be positive?
I think it can be. It can also be used to describe things that are enduring,
Okay.
reliable, like, the perpetual cycle of the seasons.
Right.
Or, the perpetual bond of friendship.
So it's all about perspective.
It is.
Sometimes what seems like a curse is actually, a blessing.
It can be.
Okay. Well, speaking of things that can be both good, and speaking of things that can be both good and bad, let's talk about a word that captures that feeling of, disappointment or even pity. Pathetic.
Pathetic.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. It's like, I don't know, like watching someone trip and fall and you feel bad for them.
Right.
But you also can't help but chuckle a little bit. Yeah, it's like, the source uses it to describe a performance that's just so lacking in effort or skill that it's almost painful to watch.
Right.
It's that, like someone tells a joke and it just falls flat.
Yeah.
And you just cringe hoping they'll recover.
Yeah. But is it ever okay to call someone or something pathetic? Isn't that a little harsh?
It really depends. Sometimes, it's used in a more lighthearted way. Like
Yeah.
if you're teasing a friend about their terrible cooking.
Sure.
But when it's directed at someone's efforts or character, then yeah, it can be pretty cutting.
Okay. So we have to be careful.
We do. Words can have a big impact.
Speaking of impact,
Yeah.
let's talk about a phrase that's all about challenging someone's authority.
Oh, yeah.
To call their bluff.
Call their bluff. That's a bold move.
It is.
Our source uses it in a situation where one person suspects that the other person is exaggerating or lying about their position.
Right.
It's basically saying, I don't believe you. Prove it.
Right.
It's a risky move.
It is.
Because if you're wrong, you could lose a lot.
Yeah.
But if you're right, you gain the upper hand.
So it's a gamble.
It is.
Okay, so high stakes. Let's move on to a word that has a much more positive connotation.
Okay.
Adept.
Adept, yeah.
That suggests, a high level of skill.
Right, like expertise.
It's like, I don't know, that friend who can solve a Rubik's Cube in seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that colleague who can just whip up a brilliant presentation
Right.
and make it look so easy.
You do.
Our source actually highlights someone who's adept at, reaping the rewards of their actions.
So it's not just skill.
Right.
It's also, shrewdness.
Right.
Strategic thinking.
Like they know how to, make things happen.
Yeah.
But even the most adept individuals can get caught up in a frenzy every now and then.
Oh, a frenzy. Yes.
Right, that feeling of, I don't know, uncontrolled energy.
Right, like a whirlwind.
Yeah, whirlwind of emotions.
Yeah, factions.
Like being swept away by a current.
It is a bit like that, isn't it? You lose control.
You're just along for the ride.
You are.
But frenzies,
Yeah.
they don't last forever. Eventually things start to settle down.
They do.
And we enter this period of, well, dwindling.
Dwindling. Yeah, it suggests, a gradual decrease.
Like a fading light.
Exactly.
Or, I don't know, a melting ice cube.
Yeah, that feeling of something slowly slipping away.
Right. Like the end of summer.
It is a bit like that.
But even in the midst of decline, we can experience, those sudden upsurges
Oh, yeah, an upsurge, yeah.
of energy or activity.
It's that sudden increase.
It's like a wave crashing on the shore.
It is.
Or, I don't know, a geyser erupting.
That feeling of, momentum building.
It's like your favorite band announcing a reunion tour.
Exactly. Suddenly you're full of excitement.
Yeah, yeah. But change doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes it's a more gradual process, phasing in new ideas or practices.
Phasing in, yeah. It suggests a more deliberate approach.
Right, well planned.
It's about creating a smooth transition.
Right. Minimize the disruption.
Exactly.
It's like easing into a cold swimming pool.
It is a bit like that, isn't it?
Dip your toes in first.
Okay.
But sometimes we also need to phase out those things that aren't serving us anymore.
Phase out. Yeah, that suggests a gradual removal.
Right.
Like, slowly reducing our dependence on fossil fuels.
Okay.
Or discontinuing a product.
It's like decluttering our lives.
It is. Getting rid of the old to make way for the new.
But change, whether it's phased in or out, can sometimes leave us feeling a bit, well, jaded.
Jaded, yeah. It's that sense of, weariness or disillusionment.
Right, like you've just had enough.
You have. The sparkle's gone.
Yeah. It's like eating too much candy.
Yeah, exactly.
It was fun at first.
It was.
But now you just feel sick. So how do we combat that jaded feeling? Do we need, like, a complete life overhaul?
That's a really good question. I mean, that's probably a topic for a whole other deep dive.
Yeah.
It is.
But for now, I want to focus on a word that I think is often used in a very positive light.
Okay.
Pledge.
Pledge.
It suggests a very solemn promise.
Right.
Like the oath a doctor takes. Or the commitment a couple makes on their wedding day.
A vow.
Yeah. It implies that deep sense of responsibility.
Okay.
The source mentions a politician making a pledge to support up-and-coming politicians.
Right.
And it really does highlight the importance of mentorship
Right.
and guidance, especially for those future leaders.
Yeah, it's about paying it forward. And, I think as we wrap up our deep dive into advanced everyday English, that's a perfect note to end on.
It is.
It's not just about, sounding smarter or more sophisticated.
Yeah.
It's about using language to connect, to inspire, to make a real difference.
Absolutely. And remember, this journey of language learning, it never really ends.
It doesn't.
There's always more to discover, always more to learn.
I like that.
So keep exploring, keep learning, keep having fun with it. This has been another fascinating deep dive into advanced everyday English. See you next time for more linguistic adventures.